So welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. My name is Karen Kennedy, for those of you who don't know me already, and I'm a certified nutritionist in integrative and functional nutrition, and I own Real Food Matters, and I specialize in blood sugar, helping people with their blood sugar and metabolic health. And we're going to talk about lunches today. I'm going to go through some things. I'm going to run through this all really quickly because it's being recorded. So I want to be able to give you just a whole bunch of information, knowing that you have the handouts, you already have your handouts, and you can watch the recording, because for better or worse, I like to over deliver whenever I give a webinar and give you as much information as I can. I do have the chat open. So if any of you have a question for me, go ahead and put it in the chat and I'll do my best to keep an eye on that. First of all, can somebody just type in the chat that you can hear me all right and you can see my screen share? Just type yes. Somebody type yes. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, great. You guys are awesome. All right, so let's talk lunchtime. So this is my schedule for today. And it also in the chat, if you have specific questions, go ahead and put them in there and I might get to them and I might not. I usually like to do this where people can unmute and ask questions and this can get workshoppy. I kind of want to say that to the end, but you know me, if you have a question and you would just want to unmute yourself, go ahead, because that's actually more fun for me. I don't think this is going to be so huge. I thought I was going to be all formal and keep everybody muted, but that's not my style. So what we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to do a quick and dirty all about blood sugar, why you should care about blood sugar at lunchtime for yourself or your kids who you're packing lunches for. We're going to do some lunch brainstorming. So we're going to why blood sugar, and then nutrition basics, translate that nutrition basics into food and how the food fits into nutrition basics, do some brainstorming. We're going to brainstorm for planning, for shopping, and we're going to use Pinterest for that. So we're building Pinterest boards that in your workbook that you got, you have links to that. And if we make anything new on the fly today, I'll be sure to send you a link for that too. Yeah, so let's get going. Let's talk about blood sugar. Those of you who've worked with me before, taken my classes, you have heard this before, and I just hope this is useful enough that hearing it again will also be helpful. So in order to understand blood sugar, we need to understand carbohydrate metabolism. So in the macronutrients, so we have macronutrients and we have micronutrients in nutrition. The micronutrients are your vitamins and minerals. Very important, but not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about macronutrients, which includes fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. And the macronutrient that affects blood sugar primarily, overwhelmingly, is carbohydrates. I am not going to be here saying carbohydrates are bad, good, or anything. I want you to understand what they are, how they work, and how you could make them work for you. The main food sources of carbohydrate are basically grains, legumes, beans and peas, starchy vegetables, the roots, fruits, milk. I know people forget that there's lots of sugar in milk, and your usual honey, maple syrup, cane sugar. Those are the actual food sources of carbohydrates. Types of carbohydrates. I'm going to try to stay away from saying bad or good, because if it comes from an actual food, there's nothing bad about the food. It's just learning where the food fits in your day. But I am going to put them into two categories, and that's simple sugars or fast carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates or starch, which are slow. And so I'm using complex carbohydrates and starch interchangeably. And this is going to seem very chemistry-ish, very, oh my gosh, this is so techie. I just thought I was going to learn how to pack lunches. Don't worry. I just want you to understand the why and the how. So when you leave this, you can actually go, oh, I understand this whole carbohydrate thing. So simple sugars are simple because they're just those small ones, the monosaccharides and disaccharides. So these are the glucose. And also, when you say blood sugar, and blood glucose, it means the same thing. Glucose is just the sugar that's floating around in your body. Fructose is your fruit sugar. Galactose is mostly just found in milk. And you combine those monosaccharides together and you get a variety of disaccharides, sucrose and table sugar, lactose and milk sugar. We call them fast because they're so small, they absorb rapidly into the bloodstream when you eat them because they don't have to be digested anymore. Complex carbohydrates or starch, on the other hand, these are big molecules and they're basically big branch chains of glucose. That's the G. And so they're basically the same thing, but they're absorbed more slowly. For example, a fellow who also went to Bastyr, he wrote a book eons ago. It was called, I can't remember what it was called, but it basically said a carbohydrate's a carbohydrate. It doesn't matter if it's a Snickers bar or a carrot. When it gets in your blood, it's the same thing. And technically, that's correct. You know, they do, once you absorb it, it's all going to be glucose. But the case I'm making here is the rate at which it enters your bloodstream matters. And I think I'm talking to a lot of people who are parents because this is about packing lunches. And I don't have to tell you that the rate in which sugar enters the bloodstream matters because you see it in real time in your children. So when we break down starches, this happens with enzymes. And we have an enzyme in our mouth and secreted into our small intestine called amylase. And of course, I'm a child of the 80s, so I represent it with a Pac-Man. And when these enzymes act on starches, they break them down. They don't just blow it apart instantly. They break it down, you know, from the ends. And so that's why complex carbohydrates like this are like a time release carbohydrate. They're slow because it just breaks down one at a time. And then when it's in the intestine, like this is my great graphic art here. This gray tube is like the inside of the intestine, the lumen of the intestine. And you get these disaccharides here, and you see these little enzymes, the Pac-Man enzymes. They're on the brush border of the small intestine here, and they're just helping to break those apart so that the glucose is absorbed through that single cell layer in the intestine, and then you get glucose in the bloodstream, and that is blood sugar. That's the story of blood sugar. But this is where it gets interesting. So blood sugar is something that's tightly regulated in your body. You've heard of the term homeostasis, where you're trying to stay in a Goldilocks zone. So just like you want your body temperature to stay in a really narrow window, you want your blood pressure needs to stay in a narrow window, blood sugar needs to stay in a very narrow window. You never have zero blood sugar or you'd be dead. You can have it really high and still be alive, but not feel good, and it's going to cause you problems. But there's this Goldilocks zone that likes it. And I'm just using units of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to show you how high, what the concentration of blood glucose should be in the body for it to be healthy and happy. But on this graph, you can see that the x-axis here is time. So our time equals 0 is basically the time that you first eat in the morning, when you break a fast. That's time equals 0, when you first eat. So let's say you wake up in the morning, and I'm just going to put this on here. You wake up in the morning and you have a meal that's mostly complex carbohydrates, like oatmeal. Of course, sugar and raisins are not complex carbohydrates, but just being real, that's what people put on their oatmeal. Because these are primarily slower carbohydrates, you're going to get a curve that looks something like this. See, you can see here when it starts off, you have, a low blood sugar, but it's at the base of the Goldilocks zone, this baseline, because you never have zero blood sugar. And then because you eat sort of a slow-ish absorbing carbohydrate, your blood sugar goes up gradually, and then it comes down gradually, and you come back down to baseline. You stay in the Goldilocks zone the whole time, probably for someone with a healthy metabolism. Those of you if you've taken my Hack Your Blood Sugar class, you know that some people will eat oatmeal and go way out of this range, so this is okay. This kind of gets a grade of a B or a C. But if you were to eat a meal of refined carbohydrates and sugar, like classically is almost any cold cereal with milk, because milk is just simple sugar, and most cold cereals are pretty They spike your blood sugar. Any of these meals that you eat are going to give you a curve that looks like this. You start off in the same place, but then your blood sugar rises rapidly and goes high and goes above the Goldilocks zone. And we call this hyperglycemia, high blood sugar. And then what often happens we see is people's bodies, your body is like, get this blood sugar down and get it down now. And so it employs some tactics, and sometimes it overshoots when it goes too high. And so you end up with something called hypoglycemia. Even if it's not a critical hypo, it gets a little bit low. So you get this kind of yo-yo effect. And you can compare that to that slow carbohydrate meal of oatmeal. And basically what oatmeal does is it's flattened the curve. We all know what flatten the curve looks like now. For all you math people out there, you would say that the area under the curve is the same for both of them, but this one just stays in homeostasis more easily. So this is not a good idea. But we can go one further. Well, you can actually go two further and go, instead of just having the complex carbohydrates, you can have a balanced meal. And that means you don't just have carbohydrates. I mean, if you're eating a whole foods diet, you're going to get some other macronutrients in there. You're going to have some healthy carbohydrates, some protein, fat, and fiber in there. And when you do, you'll get a curve like this, where the curve is even flatter. This is because when you eat protein and fat, especially protein and fat, when they hit your stomach, it releases a hormonal signal that slows your gastric emptying down. It tells your stomach, hold on to that food a little longer. So it makes more of a time release effect on your food. And then fiber, what fiber does is it tends to kind of like, especially soluble fiber, it just gets in the way of those enzymes, and it just takes the enzymes longer to break down those carbohydrates. So they all act to create a time release effect in the meal. So this is great. You know, compare that to the simple sugar meal and compare that to the complex carbohydrate meal, and you know, the balanced meal is the way to go. Yeah, so this gets a star. But what often happens with people, kids, adults, everybody, you know, when I run group programs, when I do my hack your blood sugar using a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor. So I get a front row seat and I can see people's blood sugar levels continually throughout the day. And almost everybody who starts on one of those kind of starts as a hot mess, because if you live in the United States, our food culture is very skewed towards a high carbohydrate, you know, yo-yo blood sugar sort of day. And this is what it tends to look like. You know, you could have a high glycemic meal for breakfast. And when I say high glycemic, that term I'm throwing in there because a high glycemic is something that spikes your blood sugar, that gets your blood sugar up rapidly. That's something high glycemic. So it goes up and then it comes down, you know. But what's interesting when you have low blood sugar is generally so dangerous to your body. It's so problematic that your body has redundant mechanisms to get it back up into the Goldilocks zone. Three of the main ones are: one, you secrete a hormone called glucagon, which helps your liver start the process of gluconeogenesis. It makes glucose. It releases stored energy so that it just like, here, quick, more glucose. That's the liver's job. The liver's job is to manage your glucose levels like that. You will also secrete a hormone called adrenaline. That's your fight or flight hormone. So you'll get a nice surge of adrenaline, and that's where you might feel hangry. You know the hangry feeling? When people tell me they get hangry a lot, I know that there's blood sugar dysregulation. The other one is you crave a food that, or drink or chemical that will get your blood sugar back up. And we learn very early in life what foods will give us this reward because it's a survival mechanism. So, you know, if you feel this, you'll automatically, you know, pop in for a frappuccino, you'll grab a muffin, you'll get a glass of juice, something that will get you back up there. This is hardwired. And so you'll do this again. Rinse and repeat all day long. If left to your own devices, this is generally what happens. And so what happens with this, the side bit, is you end up kind of stressed out all day. You you can get these surges of stress hormones, this adrenaline, and this is problematic. So you probably, I'm sure you know what it feels like when you've had a day where you feel like you've been putting out fires all day long. It's just a stress, it's just stress, it's a stress, and it just feels like you're being pulled in a million directions. It's exhausting because your body is bathed in stress hormones, adrenaline. And then what ends up happening is after all these hits of adrenaline, your body will start producing cortisol, right? And cortisol is awesome in the right place. What cortisol is one of our main stress hormones. And, you know, a little bit of stress is actually good for us. For me, it gets me to clean my house when someone's coming over. It gets us up in the morning. You know, we secrete cortisol first thing in the morning if we're lucky. It gets us out of bed, gets us motivated, gets us moving. And then throughout the day, our cortisol levels wane. They come down, so they're nice and low at night. And then we produce melatonin and go to sleep. But if we experience chronic stress, chronic repeated release of stress hormones, we make more cortisol and we make it in the evening. So cortisol is our can-do hormone. It gets us, we can go through the day, you know, we're going on fumes. We've got our second wind. Your second wind is cortisol, not what you want if you want to go to sleep. So this is great if you need to get through a long, hard day, pull an all-nighter, or, you know, just show up in an emergency. But it's not so great when you're trying to sleep. Elevated cortisol levels can disrupt your sleep because it opposes melatonin, hard to make melatonin if you've got elevated evening cortisol. And also cortisol increases your appetite and cravings for hyperpalatable food. Okay. If you have high cortisol levels, not just in the evening, but elevated throughout the day, from stress, from pain, from not sleeping well, from yo-yo blood sugar, it triggers more cravings. It's a survival mechanism. It causes insulin resistance, something I won't go into as much today. But insulin resistance is the first step towards diabetes, towards prediabetes and diabetes. Insulin resistance makes it harder to lose weight. We put that weight on in our bellies, that belly fat. So that causes more inflammation and pain and blah, blah. Elevated cortisol causes an elevated in blood sugar and elevated blood pressure. So you don't want it. And managing your blood sugar or managing your child's blood sugar is really key to helping regulate your nervous system, stay calm, be able to be calm and focused, and sleep well. All things we want for ourselves and our kids. So that's the why. That's the why are we caring about blood sugar? And lunch is actually an important bit that people miss because they're busy, or when you're out and you need lunch, sometimes it just doesn't get planned. And I find that that really messes up people's ability to focus, to concentrate. And if they do that, it also causes them to overeat at night. But I want to look at this whole blood sugar thing through the lens of a child's day. And I want you to keep in mind that we are all large children, but I like looking, you know, I like using a muse. And so for me, my muse is little Mike here, because, you know, who doesn't want a little kid to have a great day? It's easier to sometimes feel sympathetic for a little kid than it is ourselves. So let's look at Mike's day. Let's look at little Mike's day of yo-yo blood sugar. You know, this is the Goldilocks zone. Let's say Mike didn't sleep well. For whatever reason, he got to bed late, didn't sleep well, and he woke up late, didn't have time for breakfast. He just had grabbed like a couple of Pop-Tarts or something, didn't drink any water, and just ran into school. And so this sugary breakfast gave him a really spiky blood sugar. And then by the time he's sitting down in class, he's hangry. He's got that adrenaline kick. And everybody reacts differently to that, but you'll often get, you know, you can't focus, he's acting out, he's got to burn off some of this adrenaline, desperate need of some recess time. But of course, as we know, if you don't get your work done, you have to stay in at recess. So this is probably what's happening. And then when he goes to lunch, so remember, he's craving something that's going to get his blood sugar up here, and he's thirsty. And I'm telling you, chocolate milk is the best way to get your blood sugar up quickly. Not the healthiest way, not a good idea, but it will get his blood sugar up rapidly. So he's going to go for that. He's going to go for a chocolate milk, which are always, front and center, maybe a snack bar, something quick to fill his stomach and then get out on the playground. And inevitably, this is what's going to happen. You're going to get another yo-yo blood sugar thing. Tired, grumpy, can't focus. He can't focus in the afternoon at school, or you're not focusing in the afternoon at work. You're sleepy. You need that afternoon caffeine, which, oddly enough, kids aren't allowed to go to the coffee shop, after lunch at school. Tired, grumpy, can't focus, hungry, thirsty. Gets home, starving, crabby, juice and crackers. Of course, that's just sugar and sugar. So spikes his blood sugar again, and it doesn't fill him up. So of course, right before dinner, he's tearing the walls down going, can I have some more? And he has some more juice and crackers at like 5:30, right before dinner. So he doesn't have an appetite for dinner, doesn't eat enough for dinner, now is just had no protein all day long, poor kid. And of course, his adrenaline, he's been living on stress hormones all day long, not just because of the sugar, but because, he's probably not doing very well in school, maybe getting in trouble, but it's just not going his way. So it's going to lead to elevated evening cortisol. He's not going to be able to sleep very well and probably repeat this whole cycle again. But let's look at his day with balanced blood sugar. Let's say good weekend. Let's say Mike's dad had a lot of extra free time this weekend, went shopping, did some meal prep. They got some exercise and just had a good day on, especially Sunday. They had a really good day. So he slept really well. And so he wakes up with time to eat. His dad's got time to help him with breakfast. And so he has some water with some oatmeal or some eggs, something that gives him this nice blood sugar curve. Yay. So he's in class. He can focus. I don't know what kid can really focus a lot at school, but at least it's better. It's focused enough. Of course, he packed a lunch because dad did some meal prep over the weekend, minimal meal prep. Yeah, this is not an awesome lunch, but way better than what he had. He's got some water to hydrate. Yeah, Rebecca, it is a tragic diet, and it is totally, we all grew up eating that way. I grew up in the 80s, and this is what we all had. Water, sandwich, and apple. So he's getting some protein, some hydration, some fiber, and then he goes out and plays. Yeah, he's going out to recess. And then when he comes home, of course he's hungry. Ideally he had something for the bus ride home, but at least when he gets home, sure, maybe he has some crackers because he wants them, but instead of juice, he has water to hydrate. And he has some cheese first, because we know have protein first just to balance your blood sugar. And so again, he's staying in his Goldilocks zone. And he has that right away so that by the time dinner rolls around, he has a balanced dinner, eats really well, early bedtime, goes to sleep. This is what we want for Mike. So where do we start with balancing blood sugar for our kids and for ourselves? Because we all have to do this, right? And I know we're thinking about this for little Mike, but I hope you can see some parallels with your own lunches. And we're talking about the quality of food, the quantity of food, and the quantity of macronutrients relative to each other, and balancing your meals. So in terms of quality, we're talking about choosing more whole foods and fewer processed foods. So having whole fruit instead of juice. People, I'm telling you, if you do nothing else, no more, just cut the juice. Or if you have the juice, have it diluted, heavily diluted. When you drink juice, you're just mainlining sugar. And they have shown that not only does this spike our blood sugar, it puts us into foraging mode where we have all the cravings, and it shifts us into fat storage big time. And it's just really problematic for everybody involved. So whole fruit is great. Even things like grapes and mangoes, super high in sugar. They really spike your blood sugar. As long as you eat a little protein first, a little cheese or something, that's going to be a lot better for you. Whole grains instead of white flour, but there's workarounds there. Just emphasizing more complex carbohydrates over simple sugars. And what this means, this doesn't mean you have to have a perfecty diet. It means when you do your shopping, I have a shopping channel on YouTube, and Shopping with Karen, and I go through a lot of supermarket items that a lot of people buy in the store for better things. So you're not always buying perfect whole food ingredients. Sometimes you get a compromise, but you're always trying to get it a little bit less processed. So a whole food is just something you can imagine growing: a chicken, a fish, an apple tree. How many ingredients does it have? One itself. What's been done to the food since it was harvested? The less, the better. Many of the foods we eat no longer resemble anything found in nature. So read the list of ingredients. I love this list. I actually copied it from one of my favorite cookbooks, Feeding the Whole Family, who was written by one of my mentors and instructors at Bastyr, Cynthia Lair. And I really recommend that book, especially if you have kids. Is this part of the food or the whole entity? So juice versus fruit. Eating a whole fruit, you get all the fiber, you get a lot of phytonutrients, all the water. It's just a night and day for your health. But again, you don't have to have 100% whole foods. I don't think you can live in the United States and have kids in this world and function and earn a living and do that without driving yourself crazy. So the idea is not perfection. It's just moving more towards whole and less processed. And then there's combining. And when I talk about combining, there's an old school food combining for digestion. If you know what that is, I'm not talking about that. There's a new phrase that I've heard since I developed these that says, don't eat a naked carb. And this is basically that. You always want to combine a carbohydrate with protein, fiber, and or fat, because again, they create more of that time release effect. One of the best hacks that I teach my group at my Hack Your Blood Sugar Using a CGM class is eating protein first. Don't just eat the protein with it, eat it first to slow down the blood sugar, because we have seen wearing those monitors that it makes a difference. So it looks like this, by adding fiber, beans and pulses like chickpeas and lentils are incredibly high in fiber. So things like hummus and bean dip, bean burritos, it's a great way to add more fiber. But just switching from white rice to brown rice, white flour to whole wheat flour, juice to fruit, that's fiber. Adding fat, you're using full fat natural yogurt. My goodness, please stop buying fat-free yogurt unless you have a major gallbladder issue. Nut and seed butters, cream cheese, avocados, olives, cheese. Protein, and you can mix your protein sources up between plant and animal sources of protein. Fish, grass-fed meats and poultry, beans, yogurt, eggs, nuts and seeds. And you can see there's overlap here. So beans and pulses, they're high in protein and high in fiber. They have carbs, they have starches. Lots of fat and protein crossovers, you can see. So sometimes you can eat one or two foods and get it all, especially whole foods. And then in a nutshell, when you eat snacks, I generally recommend people not snack, because snacking implies you're just sort of walking around sticking your hand in, shoving random things in your mouth. And it's usually something very high in carbohydrate. If you do eat a snack, I call them, have a solid snack, which means make it more like a small meal following all these principles, because you can easily spike your blood sugar with a snack. I'll skip that. So now we're going to go to the nutrition basics, and I'm showing you a few things that you have in your packet. So when you signed up for this class, you downloaded a little workbook, Lunchtime, and it has some of this information in it. So I'm just going to show you what it is, knowing that you have it. It gives you kind of the basics about hydration, protein, fat, carbohydrate, and veg and fruit, because these are the elements that you want at every meal, and why. I always tell people the first thing that you want to do is drink water. Drink water before every meal, get yourself hydrated. And it's not so that you'll feel full and eat less. It's so that you're hydrated. And sometimes drinking water after a meal does kind of impair people's digestion. It depends on your digestion. But just get that glass of water and down it before your meal. Eat the protein next. And in fact, when we're planning our lunches, I'm going to encourage you to plan around protein, because often that can be the trickiest part to get in there. Most of the time, we're so focused on easy, portable carbohydrate foods. Protein sources tend to be the toughest. We want to include fat in there because fat keeps you full. Fat keeps you full and it carries the flavor. But it also helps stabilize our blood sugar, and it improves the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K, all really important nutrients. So eat a lot of colorful vegetables that have lots of beta carotene in them with your lunch, but you have a fat-free lunch, you're not going to absorb all that beta carotene. Your absorption of fat-soluble nutrients like these and things like beta carotene will be impaired if you don't eat fat with it. So for most of you, that's good news. You're going to have some carbohydrates. These are not hard to find, and some veg and fruit. So the other list that you have in there, this is kind of food list for the fridge. This is translating that nutrition information into actual food ideas. And this is the hard part, because you usually have you have a very busy Venn diagram. Like, let's say you're trying to get some protein in there. And I call the protein growing food when I'm talking to kids. You need some growing food in there. And so I list things like eggs, chicken, deli meat, cheese, nuts, yogurt, sardines, hummus, beans. You've got to make sure it's protein. You have to make sure it doesn't spoil. You have to make sure your child likes it. You have to make sure it's allowed in their classroom if this is a packed lunch. And so there's lots of things that there are a lot of stars that have to align for things to work. So it's hard for me to give you exact ideas because I don't know what your family's preferences are. I don't know what your kid will eat, and I don't know what is not allowed in their classroom. But you just looking at these things, I want you to broaden, maybe not this one, but I want you to broaden your idea of what lunch could be. Lunch could be a thermos full of hearty soup. My daughter loves soup. That's something that she's a picky eater, but she loves soup. Maybe it's because I'm a great soup maker, but we work with that. So sometimes I will send her, I just always make sure I have a good hearty soup or stew that I make over the weekend, and I have enough for at least 3 days of her lunch, and then we're covered, because she's a tough one. But some of these are leftover, look like a fried rice, a wrap, some leftover mac and cheese, a quickie salad. So we've got lots of ideas that'll come together here. But this is just a starter for you for something for the fridge. Because often your kids are old enough, if they're in school, where you can put this on the fridge and maybe have them add to it. So when you're thinking about planning your lunches, lunch planning ends up being more of a multiple choice task than a fill in the blank task. And we all know multiple choice is easier, because saying, what do I want for lunch? I don't know. Instead, you could say, choose your protein, choose this, and then you can do your shopping. So planning is everything. Planning is everything. The number one thing that you can do to improve your diet, reduce the amount of money you spend on food, reduce food waste, is plan your meals in advance in some way. It doesn't have to be to a T, but just getting some planning done, shopping, and then shopping and doing some prep, but at least plan. So your weekly shopping, check your schedule and be realistic about your time. I can't say this enough, because on the weekends, when you're kicking back and having some relaxed time, if you're like me, and I know some of you are, you're going to be very idealistic about, I'm going to make all these great lunches next week. I'm going to do this, and this, and it's going to be gorgeous, especially when you're tripping out on Pinterest with these great ideas. And by the time Wednesday comes around, you are not enthusiastic anymore. And you don't have time, and you're tired because some things come up, because something always comes up. So be uber realistic about your time and expectations. Make a list to include some grab and go items that are healthier than fast food or not eating. So that is, create a low bar. Yeah. So like, you might want yourself to eat salmon, green beans, and roasted potatoes for lunch every day. And I hope you can do that. But be realistic that the shit could just hit the fan one of those days, and you need something to eat that is better than a muffin and coffee. So make sure you have them, whether they're ready meal, frozen meals. Find something that's a low bar that's just better than the whatever kind of crap you eat, or the meal that you skip. And then do your Sunday prep, because make your life easier. I know you'd rather spend time on Sunday or Saturday doing something else, but it is a gift to your future self. Roast some nuts for snacks, hard boil some eggs and peel them. Don't underestimate the sheer amount of laziness or fatigue that you're going to have, and you won't want to peel an egg. Cut up vegetables for dipping. Cut up sliced cheese and meats for snacks and lunches. Make it easy. Put it in containers. Make salads for sandwiches and wraps. I like making egg salads or chicken salads and put it in a tub. You might buy them. Maybe when you're shopping, one of your low bar things is to buy some of these salads so that you can just plop it on some crackers. What do you say? I had a shopping video with some great frozen meals. I was surprised at some of the frozen meals out there. They're not too bad. I like to think of main dish salads, like I have a black bean salad or quinoa salad that I can just scoop into a bowl that's reasonably high in protein, and I can just bring that for my lunch. That's super easy. I like making quiches or frittatas quickly because I can just cut it up in pie wedges and put it in a tub in the fridge, and that becomes a grab and go protein source. And then, so you have your weekly shopping and your big weekly prep, big, medium, big. And then of course, each night before work or school, you check your schedule, have a good contingency plan for extra busy days. And then this comes from when I first started practicing as a nutritionist. One of my first clients ever was actually a success story. I was living in England at the time, and this fellow came to me and he said, he was very overweight, and he said, I want to lose weight and I want to be healthy, but I want to eat a whole foods diet. The only catch is, he goes, I eat almost every meal out of my car. I drive a lot for work. He has a large territory. He's a sales rep. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? And so I developed this for him back in 2002, I think, 2003. And this is what he did. He had a cooler that lived in his car, and he had a basket, like a tote. The tote had non-perishables, and then he refilled his cooler made sure his cooler was full every night with ice. And he kept it stocked with some fresh fruit, sandwich, a wrap, or a rice bowl. Sometimes he would buy hummus. Anyways, he ate all of his meals out of his car, and I didn't hear from him after I gave him this, but I saw him like 3 years later. I ran into him and he looked great. I'm like, who, Andrew? What? I never heard from you again. He goes, oh, but it worked. It was great. I actually didn't need to call you again because the plan you gave me was great. And so it just goes to show you don't have to have the perfect meal. Maybe you don't get all the great sit down meals at the table. Of course, it's ideal, especially with your kids. But if you have a busy life, you can make it work. It just takes a little planning. So you have that. And now I want to move to anything in the chat. Any questions? I'd like to move to the Pinterest boards, because this is where we can brainstorm. And this is where I'd love it if you want to unmute and give me your ideas. Because on these Pinterest boards, this is where we're going to get some inspiration and store some ideas. Because let's face it, this is what happens with lunch planning. This is what happens with me. When I would start the school year and I'm kind of ambitious. I'm like, oh, I'm going to do all these packed lunches. I'm so excited. And I should say both of my kids are in high school now, and I never get excited about packing lunches anymore. The fall excitement about packing lunches is totally worn off. Now I just don't want to do it ever, ever. It's my least favorite food thing to do, is to pack a lunch. But I used to like it in the fall. But what I need to do occasionally is just come back and get some visual inspiration, visual ideas. And then it's like multiple choice, because decision-making fatigue, coming up with the ideas, when you're a parent, when you're anybody, we have so many decisions to make, and it's too much to ask. So that's why I like using Pinterest and making boards for you so that you can come back to them. So in the workbook that I gave you, it has these links to these boards, so you can always come back to them. So for this, what I've done, I've made these 3 boards. I actually just made this one today. but let's have the first one we look at be lunch containers. Because in a way, what you put the lunch in doesn't matter in some ways, but sometimes it really does. And I don't think there's a perfect way to pack the lunch, a perfect bit of equipment to put your lunch in, because it depends on the user and the person packing it. It just depends on everybody. For instance, I finally leveled up and got a really good insulated thermos, because I realized my daughter was always wanted hearty soups. She wanted a lot of soup, and I found one that just kept things hot for days. And so I must have paid $40 for a really good thermos, and I'm so glad, because I use it every day. Some people like to invest. I used to use these laptop lunch boxes. This is what I use for my kids almost their whole lives until recently. And let's see, can I click on it? Yeah. This is by lunchbox.com. It's plastic, it's not BPA, but at a certain point with lunches, as long as you're not throwing it in the microwave, I just figure do the best you can. But I like these. We should add links for freezer packs for lunches. Yeah, we should. I might have them in this one. So let's put a pin in that, Amy. I like these, especially for little kids, because it's visual. They don't have a lot of time to eat, and they can just, sometimes you open it up and they're all open, or they just take off a few lids, and it makes it so much easier than opening a whole bunch of different containers. It's visual. I find this gets them to eat the food. The downside with this is sometimes, these can all go in the dishwasher. Another one like this, it's all divided up, is like these stainless steel lunch boxes that are all divided, because they can go in the dishwasher more easily. I have some of these lunch bots. And actually Planet Lunchbox or Planet Box is one that is completely sealed and goes in the dishwasher. There it is, Planet Box. This is one you just dump it all out, open it up, stick it in your dishwasher, bam, and wash it. They are not cheap. They're an investment. And for some of us, some people have kids who lose everything. And in that case, you might be beating yourself up for this, but sometimes that's when you just go to Walmart and get the cheapest divided plastic containers that if it doesn't come home, doesn't come home. And the nice thing about these sometimes is you can buy like 5 or 10 of these and pack all the lunches on Sunday, and they're just stacked in the fridge and ready to just grab for the rest of the week. So don't rule that out. And like I always tell people, I used to be a person who would be like, oh, plastic, I can't use plastic. And as a result, I worked too hard. Life became so hard that my health suffered. And there's a balance to be struck, is what I'm saying. If you're not going to heat the food up in the microwave, plastic isn't as bad as you might think it is. So you might need that. And it takes the pressure off the kids from getting throttled when they lose their $100 lunch container. So that's what this board is. This board is for containers and ideas. Meg says she gets them on Amazon when Amazon has a sale. Oh, you're talking about the freezer packs, Meg, or the actual lunch boxes? More ideas. Let's do ice packs, freezer packs. How do I search? There it is. Freezer packs. Oh, you get the bent go lunch boxes. Otherwise, they're kind of spendy. Yeah. Oh, they're coming up with food prep for freezers. Yeah. Some of them come with freezer things. Oh gosh, I have to say I'm not very skillful with Pinterest, and you're going to see me fumble through trying to get back to where I was. There we go. I can do this. There we are. So let's go to school lunch ideas. And like I said, use the chat or just start talking and say what you do and works for you, or post a link. If you have a link, if you're on your computer like me with a few screens and you want to post a link, I'll pull that up here. But this is what I made, and I've shared some things. I've posted a couple of people's blogs. This Clean Food Mama is someone I know writes this blog, and she does some nice food. Oh, this is her homemade granola, but it gets you onto her blog. She does a lot of plant-based stuff. I've posted things like, I shared my favorite whole wheat tortillas, and I think use whatever tortilla you like and what your kids like, but whole wheat tortillas can be unpalatable to me. But these La Rosa organic whole wheat tortillas are big for nice big burritos, and they are soft. They are wonderful. And I have a hard time finding them. You can get them at Whole Foods, New Seasons, and Chuck's around my area. But that is it. Okay, Amy is putting something on here. Oh, okay. Coolers right on. This is great. I'm going to pin this. Can I pin this? Oh, I can do this. I can't do this. I'm going to pin it later. I'm going to keep it up there and pin it later. My oldest daughter has been wanting a plain hot dog as her main protein, no bun. I do that sometimes. My kids love it. And I'll tell you a really great trick for little kids. If you take a hot dog and you cut it and you keep, like if you have it in half, here's your long hot dog. If you Google octopus hot dog, you can slice it up and turn this octopus into like this hot dog. Let me show you. This. Is that the cutest hot dog you've ever seen? So no, hot dogs aren't a healthy food. Once a week, if you give her a couple of hot dogs with ketchup as her protein source and give her some nice fruit and vegetables to go, yeah, I know, right? Then I'm saying that's still better than other things. And they come home and have a nutritious dinner. They have a good breakfast. You know, what's a hot dog now and then? Yeah. Yeah, octopus hot dogs. I love that. That was back when I packed really awesome lunches. Let's see. I love this. Healthy school lunch ideas to make your mornings easier. So just this image without going to their page is often enough where I can see, I'm reminded how much celery with peanut butter and raisin, ants on a log are so awesome, or just celery with cream cheese in them. So that's a vegetable that's crunchy that people like to snack on with some protein. I could fill a whole lunchbox with those and eat them forever. They are a little labor intensive to make. What are some other ones? So a lot of people don't just like plain finger food. If you have a kid that likes plain finger food, just count your blessings, because packing their lunch can be so easy. You know, some baby carrots, you know, buy some things that are really grab and go that make it easy for you. Yeah, I know baby carrots aren't the best carrots, but it's better than not having carrots. We like pack Laughing Cow cheese wedges. So that's a great grab and go. Would it be better with less packaging to like slice up your own cheese and put it in there? Yes. Would Laughing Cow make your life a lot easier? Yes. So like on a Sunday, you could cut up all the cheese. Yeah. Do you see what I mean? You have to decide what shortcuts you're going to use, because you're going to need some shortcuts. Hard-boiled eggs. What's the protein? I'm always like, where's the protein? This one looks like the protein is those egg cups. So you know how people will make these like mini quiches or egg cups, and they'll just, you know, in cupcake papers, they'll mix up and put some egg and vegetables and ham or bacon and put some cheese on top of it and bake it. So you have these little egg bites. Those are great. That's the kind of weekend meal prep that you can do, and then put them all in a Ziploc bag in the freezer so you have them. And that's just instant protein. Wraps or something, how much hummus is considered protein versus a spread? That's a great question. And well, it's protein. It's a spread with protein. So for example, if I was using hummus in there, I like, you know, finger food lunches. Let's say you had ants on a log that had some peanut butter. So that's a protein source, not a lot. And let's say you had some hummus for dipping with their veggies or pita, that's a little protein. And then let's say maybe you threw in some Laughing Cow cheese in there, that's a little protein. And you had some blueberries and then Hershey's Kiss, because Hershey's Kiss is love. So that's where you've just kind of, you've layered on proteins. You found a way to put in protein in each of the little sections. Does that make sense? I think it does. And here's someone who took waffles. So I love waffles, and I have a great whole grain waffle recipe on my blog. And I like to make a lot of them and then put them in the fridge or the freezer and then take them out and then put peanut butter on them and dip them in maple syrup. They're great. I wouldn't recommend them to my pre-diabetic patients, but for kids, oh, that's a real step up for a lot of kids, especially if they'll eat it. So this is really nice. Actually, let's actually look at this blog. School lunch ideas, printable cheat sheet. Sweet. That's a creepy little albino hand, isn't it? So they give you a little cheat sheet. Oh my goodness, I would take that. And they even give recipes on there too. So go for that. I like to promote other people's pages. Okay. What's our time? We got a few more minutes left. And then I put some of these in here because look at this. This is packing a really simple, this isn't an exciting lunch, is it? But this does the job, especially for an adult. Like if I needed a quick lunch and I had some health goals, I wanted to stabilize my blood sugar, keep my energy up, and maybe I was just trying to, lose a little bit, lose an inch on the belly fat. This is a super high protein lunch. Almonds have protein, edamame has protein, some eggs, some cheese. I would actually call this, for me, if I was a long day away from home, this would be snacks. I think I would eat half of this as a snack at one point of the day and another half during another time of day. But this is the kind of easy, it doesn't have to be fancy. These could be cherry tomatoes that you buy in those little boxes, so grab and go. Raw almonds, grab and go, boil a bunch of eggs, peel them on the weekends, grab and go. Yeah. So it can be really simple. Gluten-free lunches. So a lot of people who do my classes, they want gluten-free lunches. And for those of you who do gluten-free, you've got the gluten-free thing down, because you could kind of have what everyone else has. But if you send some pasta with your kids, you use gluten-free pasta. And I don't know if you've seen it, but Amy has recently shared on the Real Food Matters page this great new gluten-free pasta that she's discovered that is even great when it's cold, like for a pasta bake. It is, and she recently tested her blood sugar eating it because she's been wearing a continuous glucose monitor again. And I hope that's okay that I said that. So I hope she's going to post a link in the chat for that so you can see it. But so here's a great gluten-free lunch ideas for kids. There we go. So if I were you, I would get on this person's blog, follow her, and see what she's got for you. She's got, oh look, so this is one of those low bar things, Horizon gluten-free mac and cheese. So that's something that I would keep in my house as a backup for, I need a meal and I need a fast. And you might be thinking, oh, that's so processed in a box, blah, blah, blah. But what if you did this mac and cheese and that was like the big section of your child's lunch? And you also put some sliced apples, some celery sticks, maybe some ants on a log, a big thing of blueberries. What if you put a lot of nutrient dense fruit and vegetables and some nuts for the drive home in there? What about that? Rummo gluten-free pasta, RUMMO, is Amy's new gluten-free pasta she loves. Let's see, some snack ideas for lunch. Oh, and she's got hyperlinked to recipes, blueberry muffins to die for, salted cinnamon walnuts, nutty banana coconut bites. So I'm assuming that these are all going to raw coconut bites. These are all going to her recipes. Yeah, which is great. Now, I haven't spent a lot of time on her blog, but you could. Okay, though there's Banza, that's a popular gluten-free pasta that's made from chickpeas, which means it's going to be easy on the blood sugar. The one thing about gluten-free breads, gluten-free crackers, gluten-free pastas is a lot of them are made from rice flour, and they destroy your blood sugar control. Rice flour is so hard on the blood sugar, and if you snack on those without adequate protein, your blood sugar is going to go nuts. Amy says, for a fast meal, I get my daughter a Starbucks protein pack, lots of protein. Yeah, that is a good idea. I actually model a lot of my lunches after the Starbucks protein packs that they have. I've gone there for ideas. They have really good ideas. The same person, gluten-free lunch ideas, printables. Oh, they've got nice printables there. So I would go to their website. I love roasted potatoes. I make these nice rosemary roasted potatoes, and then if they're nice and crispy, they're good cold in lunches. Is this my friend? I've got a good gluten-free blog. I can't remember the name of it, but you see where that's going. All right. One of the sections, so I mentioned Feeding the Whole Family by Cynthia Lair. I should have brought it with me so I could show you here. It's I love that cookbook, and one of the sections in it, of course, is lunch boxes, and she does a lot of really good like meal salads, full, like what do they call it? Salads that can be a full meal, like whole grain salads and bean salads and things like that, because those are so good for taking for lunches. But she has a lot of great recipes for things like that, including energy balls, and the best granola bar recipe is I should put it in the chat. Let me find it. It's called peanut cranberry zoom bars. I'm going to get it for you before we go. Zoom bars, cranberry, Cynthia Lair. I think it's on, I know Bastyr has it on their site now. There it is. Is it? There it is. So I'm going to do a screen share here so you can see this. This is the peanut butter cranberry zoom bars. This is a recipe. This is on Female Sports Nutrition site. And I'm going to put this in the link, in the chat, if it'll let me. I think the drop-down menu is bugging me. There. This is the best granola recipe I have ever made. It is so delicious. I don't use rice syrup because I rarely have it. It's very good. I tend to use all honey in here as a substitute, but brown rice syrup is great. But the combination of honey, molasses, and peanut butter is amazing. It kind of has that chocolate-esque-ness, and then put together with those kind of tangy cranberries. Oh my gosh, they're great. Everybody will love them. So yeah, I just had to give a plug for that. All right, so that is what I have for you. I think I've stayed in my hour. How does brown rice syrup affect blood sugar? So I haven't tested it, but from what I understand, brown rice syrup is a complex carbohydrate. So in theory, it's going to be easier on the blood sugar than other things. However, it's not something I use when I'm trying to be easy on the blood sugar, but I can say that brown rice syrup won't be worse than honey. If anything, it's going to be easier than honey and other sweeteners. I just rarely see it in the stores near me anymore, so I don't buy it. And I keep bees, so I almost always have a lot of honey, gallons, in fact. So thank you for coming. I want to remind you that you all get, if you all registered for this, so you're going to get an email tomorrow. Amy's going to send that email out, and it will have this replay so you can listen to it again. And hopefully you have your workbook for this, and from that workbook, you can link to those Pinterest pages and pull some things up from there and get a little bit of inspiration. I'm guessing that you probably, if you're like me, you're on Pinterest already making your own boards, and that's great. I just wanted to give you a place to start. If you'd like to learn more with me, you know, I'm always doing all sorts of things. For those of you who are like, I need this kind of advanced nutrition course, like I need the Karen feeding of me. Like, what am I supposed to eat? How many carbs, blood sugar, how much protein? I don't get it. Especially when you're also, you know, raising kids and you get a little confused about nutrition, like everybody is, because there's so many different conflicting bits of information out there. I have a 4-week on-demand nutrition class called Nutrition 101 Metabolic Reset. Digestion, carbs, blood sugar, protein, healthy fat. It doesn't tell you how to eat. It just gives you the science and helps you personalize it for you. I'm not here to convince anybody to be vegan or keto or anything. I have 4 times a year. The next time I'm offering it is in October. I do a 4-week group program called Hack Your Blood Sugar using a CGM. CGM stands for Continuous Glucose Monitor, and it gives people a look under the hood so you can see in real time how food is affecting your body. I love this technology. It's become affordable. You don't have to have diabetes to get them. You do need a prescription. And so what I do is I help people get that prescription and get it, optimize their use, and then just we just troubleshoot everybody's blood sugar and get everybody dialed in. It is a brilliant class and a lot of fun. And if you ever want to ask me questions, if you ever think, I would like to do this, I don't know where to start, I need a little direction on that, I always offer one free phone call to people. If you ever just want to ask me, you know, I want to work with you, or I want to take a class, but I'm not sure what's right for me. I don't even know if you're right for me. I always offer this. And in your workbook, I'm sure that there's a link there that where you can do that, but you can always go to my website and just book a phone call with me, and we can talk like humans, especially if you go to my website and you see all the choices and your brain goes numb. Sometimes it's nice to talk to a human. So do you guys have any questions for me before we sign off and go to our own dinners and beds? It's been really nice to see some familiar faces here and a few new people. I think everyone on that stayed on here is new. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome, Rebecca. Nice to see you here. Hey, Shannon. Okay. Well, you guys have a lovely evening. Be sure to reach out to me, send me an email or whatever, and let me know if you have any questions. Hopefully I gave you lots of useful information and not too much information. And you guys have a really good evening. Bye, you guys.